there's this myth out there that black men can't handle being spoken to, you know, and told what to do by black women. Black men come from our bodies.
Yeah.
So they're used to having these conversations with women.
The matriarchy is strong with the black
community. It is
community.
very strong.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of people in this country who do not like black women, but black women are the base of the Democratic Party.
A motherfucker just supposed to take and accept whatever the fuck you say because I'm a black woman. Bitch, shut up. The fuck out of here.
Good women are dead. Evil bitches, rise up!
Hey, yo, Quantic, run them bands up. Hey, yo, Quantic, run them bands up. Hey, yo, Quantic, run them bands up. Quantic, run them bands up.
24 women make up about 12% of law enforcement officers in the U.S., a significant increase from the nearly 1,000 female police officers recorded back in 1974.
Women, though, still underrepresented in leadership positions within law enforcement. The Baltimore Police Department, however, on track to change that now.
This Women's History Month, reporter Caroline Forback and photojournalist Sean Mullen followed two women who are rising through the ranks.
Roll call. All right, everybody have a seat.
At the Baltimore Police Department's Eastern District, women make up 22% of personnel.
Stand by for inspection.
Depending on who was working and who wasn't, it would be a roll call room full of women and like two guys.
Sarah.
The Eastern set the standard with the most females in one district.
So during the years where Baltimore is experiencing historic levels of general mayhem, all kinds of crime, you have at least one police department in the city who has a primarily female roll call. It's mostly women, like one or two dudes, according to her. Fascinating.
And like two guys.
Sarah.
It would be a roll call room full of women and like two guys.
Sarah.
The Eastern set the standard with the most females in one district.
19-year veteran Sergeant Jennifer Bell started as a cadet right out of high school.
The pressure is intense.
She says the job was challenging at first.
Knowing that I could get injured as soon as I start my shift, knowing that there's a chance I wouldn't make it back to my family.
She says she looked up to her first sergeant, now retired Deputy Commissioner Cherie Briscoe, who helped her stick it out.
You could come to her if you had a problem, but she was going to tell you the correct way to handle a situation, but she was always there for the cadets.
Officer Shabria Ellison was
David in the chat wants to ask, he says, I need a baseline. Exactly when was the zenith of Baltimore? I think zenith is a word referring to its peak, which means its eventual decline right after that. I would say white flight. Whenever white flight began to happen in Baltimore, that was when it was pretty much downhill. The day before white flight, Baltimore was at its zenith.
was a cadet just 3 years ago. She says she knew at a young age that she wanted to be in law enforcement.
When I was in the 8th grade, there was a female school police officer at my middle school, and she was always really nice to me. Being a young girl at the time, it was something that just kind of gave me an inspiration that, you know, that could easily be me.
I wonder if she was also of the what do you call that? Alternative lifestyle persuasion. You know, because I'm just saying, you got your inspiration from somebody somewhere.
She was always really nice to me. Being a young girl at the time, it was something.
Because I know how them older alternative broads be coming at the younger, not sure if I'm alternative yet broads.
That just kind of gave me an inspiration that, you know, that could easily be me.
Now, Ellison says she enjoys being on patrol, looking out for the community and responding to emergencies.
Report any suspicious activities.
You never know what your day will bring, you know. You're a social worker, you're a doctor, you're a nurse, you are, you know, you're everybody's family friend, you're everybody's cousin. Hey!
Everything but a wife and mother. I don't know if that's a deal a lot of guys want. Just, you know, if you could decide how the women of your community, or even just your family, if you could just decide how you like them to be, I can't imagine this being one of the choices.
Good, how you feeling, man?
Like Belle, Ellison is from Baltimore and feels a personal connection to the people she helps.
And I can understand where they're coming from in a lot of situations that they deal with, people in their personal issues and family things.
Belle remembers from her days on patrol
You know, there's something else I just thought about too. This idea of representation. You know, I need someone who looks like me to be in that position. Otherwise, I just can't relate properly. I don't know if I can relate to a short lesbian. You know what I mean? It just doesn't speak to me.
It's the seemingly small interactions that make the biggest impact.
See you later, Governor.
The house that I used to go to every morning in the Central District to make sure she went to school. It's such a great feeling to see her and know that I was able to help her in her journey and not let her succumb to the pressures of being a teenager and not going to school and dropping out.
Belle reflects on her own journey with BPD as she now works toward becoming a lieutenant.
Throughout my career, I've learned to be direct, passionate, but not lose my care.
I don't know why she sounds like she has tears in her voice. Like she's fighting back tears every time she speaks. It's annoying.
Ellison says her short time on the force has already shown her she's capable of more than she ever imagined.
It will test your will, your bravery, your patience, everything, but all in ways that make you grow as an adult. There's no ceiling for me in my head. You get what I'm saying? Like there's no place that I can't go if I want to go there.
BPD is aiming for women to comprise 30% of its sworn recruits by 2030.
How's business?
But for Belle and Ellison, it's not about meeting a quota.
I got you.
It's about making a difference.
See you later, all right?
We're needed in the police department. A lot of times the women will show up on.
Are they really needed? I think it's more of a desire. Like there are definitely people in positions of authority who want a 30% female police force. But do you actually need your police force to have 30% women? And I'm not even talking about like the administrative positions, you know, 30% gun-toting patrol officers, right? Is that really what you need? Does anybody really need that?
On the scene, and we can change the outcome of it just by our nature being on the scene, the way we talk to people, the way we handle things.
If there is a woman out there considering law enforcement, if you're going to start anywhere, start here. And if the thought's in your mind, then you're pretty much halfway there.
On your
You know, American Man in the chat says, she's supposed to remind you of your mother and sister, therefore you can relate. I never liked being bossed around by my mom. I never had a big sister. I mean, kind of. I had a stepsister once for a little while, but she was older than me. I didn't like being bossed around by her either. Fat bitch. Yeah, no. I understand what you're trying to sell me, but I'm just not buying that shit, American Man. And that is the curse of the modern black man. You spend your life literally being policed by women. Literally and figuratively. But quite literally, actually. Quite literally.
Corner in East Baltimore, Caroline Forback for WJZ.
President Trump is voicing his displeasure.
So, love and politics, the black gender war is mainstream. That is the title of today's show. I came across a live stream from the Native Land podcast, and I thought it would be interesting to cover their reaction to this new phenomenon of black men in particular, not just shying away from the Democrat Party as individual voters. And this is something that gets brought up directly by the podcast, which is, I think it's starting to matriculate its way up to the top of Democrat decision-making, this idea that black men and women basically hate each other in growing levels now. The idea that all of black men's social and romantic frustrations with black women have now begun to translate into what is effectively a campaign of political sabotage Yeah, they definitely brought that up on the Native Land podcast, and I do want to talk about that in a moment. Everybody, do me a favor, like, share, and subscribe. If you haven't done so already, I want you to do something for me real quick. Everybody over in the main channel, we're trying to pump these numbers up over here. So what I want you to do is to make sure you are subscribed to the backup channel This Week in Oppression with the Hoodservative, because we need to get this other channel across the monetization threshold. I am like 1,000 listening hours away. I think I'm under 1,000 hours away. I'm just at the threshold of this monetization campaign we've been on for the last couple of months here. Been doing a pretty good job keeping those numbers active on the other channel. Hopefully what I can do is move all of my effort to this backup channel, and once it's monetized, fingers crossed. But do me a favor, follow me on This Week in Oppression. If you haven't noticed, the main channel doesn't really have much content on it. I talk about stuff all the time, and you don't really see it on the main channel. I'm going to delete most of the new content off the main channel, at least for the time being. So if you want to catch reruns and replays, you got to follow me on This Week in Oppression. You got to click the link, subscribe to the backup channel, or you could just follow me on Rumble, because everything's on Rumble. But that being said, let's get into today's discussion. Politics is now the Black gender war is now affecting politics.
Because when I walked in, it was packed. And what do you think I saw? What do you think I saw?
What'd you see?
Exactly what I thought I was going to see.
What?
80 women sitting alone. No men in sight. None.
I saw so many Black women try to solve a problem in dating by starting to host events in person, trying to create third spaces to facilitate dating like offline. And you know what would happen every single time? The men were not signing up. They would be selling tickets to speed dating, and they would always end up with men's tickets on sale. Always, because they weren't buying any. Just the other day, a big account that I follow for Black creatives did like this cute Cupid thing where they were like, hey, send us a profile about yourself and we would love to post it and like play matchmaker. Sounds like a cute idea, right? Not one single man sent their profile in. And mind you, this is an account that has well over 100,000 followers. It's just time to stop. It's time to stop. They have made it very loud and clear that they do not
a singles event, and here's why I think we're doomed to be single for the rest of our lives. That was a bit dramatic, but let me tell my story. So I went to singles night at Church's Charlotte campus. Now, I don't go to that church, but I started following Pastor Stephen since he was a guest pastor at my church earlier this month. And when I found out that he was writing a book on dating and relationships, I was interested because, listen, your girl could use some divine intervention in that area. But I'll be honest, I didn't want to go at first. I figured it's a Christian singles event. There's going to be 11 women there and like 2 men. Plus, they were advertising it as a conversation that you wouldn't expect to have at church. And I thought, I've heard enough of those modern dating and relationship podcasts. I don't need to hear any more, especially not with a biblical spin. Instead of having meaningful conversations about finding and building Christ-centered relationships,
we just left the event. So I think we were just saying that we think that we've actually hit rock bottom.
No, it was actually.
We think we've actually hit rock bottom, and I think we were either punked, catfished, or
It felt like a sick joke.
And my spirit, while I was there, my spirit told me, no mas, por favor. I am not going to no more of these. Okay? That rhymed. Period. I'm not going to anymore. And here's why. So that singles event was cool because they actually had a mix and mingle session at the end where they put us in a very cool atmosphere for people to talk and meet with each other. Although there was like 3 men there and 300 women, I loved the fact that they did that. I thought that was really cool. But my thing is, you go to one single event, You go to them all. They got the same message, and I'm gonna tell y'all what they be saying so that you can know ahead of time. If you feel like you're called to go, go. If you feel like the Lord is telling you to go, go. If you've never been, go. If you want to mix and mingle with other single people, go. But let me tell you, this is going to be the singles conference starter pack. I'm going to tell you what you're going to get. Okay?
I'm gonna get hate for this, but whatever. I approached a Black man this week at like a dating event, and he was not interested in me. And that by itself is like not a great story, right? I tried to shoot my shot. He was not interested. I moved on. But immediately after I walked away from this man, he went up to a group of 5 white women and he introduced himself to all of them. And then I kind of observed out of like the corner of my eye for the rest of the evening, this man was only going up and talking to different white women. Later that night, another very attractive Black man came in, the exact same thing, only talked to the white women that were in the room. There were maybe 6 or 7 Black women throughout. And I could tell, I would look over at the Black women occasionally, they would be looking, we would all be observing the same thing. We're all thinking the same thing, right? And as someone who has reviewed a bunch of different like dating events, I have seen this play out so many times where you walk into a room, the Black women are looking for other Black men and the Black men are not looking for Black women. Unless the host of the event is like a Black person or a person of color. And as much as I say that I am going to start dating outside my race, my mind, whenever I walk into like...
When I die, I'ma go to Snow Bunny Heaven. Snow Bunny Heaven.
Happy to have you guys. Let's get right into it. Who should we start with? Terrence,
Let's start with this data.
Yes.
Listen, thank you all so much for having me. Hit Strategies has been pouring through this data, this post-election data, exit poll data, voter file data, and we've been sitting in focus groups with voters of color and young folks for the past couple of weeks since the election to understand what happened, why it happened, how we fix it moving forward. And one of the first things we see here is despite the valiant efforts of the Harris campaign, I was on the Harris campaign, for full transparency, despite the efforts of the Harris campaign, who was able to close some of the gaps that we saw when Biden was at the top of the ticket. She, in fact, closed a 22-point gap amongst young voters, an 18-point gap amongst Black voters. Despite those efforts, Democrats continue to underperform with all the groups that we consider our base voters. So we got 3% less votes overall, but that includes 6% less votes from young people, 5% less from young Black voters, 19 points less amongst Latino voters, 19 points.
So the Democrats are trying to figure out where they went wrong, why they went wrong, what's actually wrong. And this is because I've been tracking this since the election, and this seems like one of the more honest. I mean, they're not as honest as I would like, but one of the more honest conversations that's been had about what's going on with the Democrat base with Black people and Black men and women in particular.
And 2% less amongst Black men. Shout out to Black men who tried to hold the line and who had the smallest reduction across any other group of men. But I do want to talk about that 2% real quick, because while Joe Biden got 79% of Black men's votes and Kamala Harris got 77%, the concern for me is the trend over time, y'all. It's that over time, we've seen 3 to 5 point less Black support amongst Black men until Barack Obama had 92%, Hillary Clinton had 82%, and Kamala Harris had 77%. And so I've been arguing that, just calling it sexism is kind of lazy analysis of what's happening. This has been ongoing over time, and Democrats got some work to do to bring these brothers, not just Black.
Ever since The Root published that infamous article saying that Black men are the white people of Black people, which is a contorted mental picture to begin with. But there has been a very intentional effort to paint Black men as something like white men, in that we are racist, sexist, and misogynist in the way that white men are. I don't know if that's the bad thing they want it to be. Like, if it's so bad, why does it feel so good?
Men, but bringing men back into the Democratic coalition.
Wow.
I think that's so powerful. I know we can probably go to the next slide, but I think it's powerful to hear. One, We were all together recently, and there was a very heated conversation around whether or not it was sexism. Sure, sexism is at play, but you saw this consistent drop off from Clinton to Joe Biden, and that was at one of the higher turnout years. Joe Biden's year was actually an outlier, right? From what we know, the numbers were much higher. What do you think is the reason, Terrence, based on what you've heard, if it's not sexism?
And this isn't something that is purely limited to women, but it's heavily found in women. This lack of accountability, the refusal to accept your responsibility for a particular negative outcome. And because the Democrats as a party are such a female-dominated, female brain kind of party, they are now in this female posture of accountability aversion. And so they can only go on the attack when confronted with their own shortcomings, right? It's not that I did bad. It's that you don't understand me. It's that you secretly hate me for some weird racial reason or something like that. And shout out to this guy. I mean, the guy that they're speaking to right now, because the guy that was going through the graphs and the numbers, he's the guest on this podcast. I don't really know his name. And I suspect he's not really on my team. He's one of those other team guys. But he did try to at least bring some countervailing facts to the Democrats' worldview.
Regardless of how we might feel about the numbers, with what the numbers say.
Yeah, look, there are several factors contributing to underperformance of men, but overwhelmingly, men are starting to identify the Republican Party as representing their values, representing the things that they care about. I don't want to negate sexism. In fact, the slide that's up here now has a very important question I think starts to explain explain where the Black community is on issues of gender and gender roles. When we ask the question, do you agree or disagree that men should be head of household, 66% of Black people believe that men should be head of household, including.
So 59% of Black women and 79% or 75% of Black men believe that men should be head of household. I think those Black male numbers are too low. I wonder what those numbers would look like in the non-Black community. I imagine those numbers would be higher than 80 in like the white community, or maybe not even the whites anymore, but once upon a time, definitely. But yeah, in the white community, I expect the numbers would be a bit higher. And a lot of these immigrant communities, the number would be higher. And, you know, I was having a long conversation. I was over on Aunt T's panel. They were talking about Umar again. And I was over there for a while. And I brought up the fact that Black men in particular, we suffer from like this generational guilt. Because, you know, there's this this idea that Black men just abandon their families or whatever. So Black men tend to we want to absorb a lot of bullshit from Black women for the sake of not being the guy who abandons his children and all that. And I'm looking at these numbers and I'm wondering how that kind of narrative plays into these who deserves to be head of household numbers. Do you niggas even believe in yourselves? I know these bitches don't believe in you. That's a whole other problem, but you gotta believe in yourself twice as much as the bitch does. I mean, that's the only way for her to believe in you, honestly.
59% of Black women, that's the majority, and 75% of Black men. I would argue that believing that men should be head of household is not a sexist value, right? It's a traditionally religious value. And it's one where we have to bring men along this conversation to explain that the role of gender in society is evolving.
And see that right there. Now you want to lecture me instead of accepting me for who I am. This is who I am. This is what I believe. This is what I want. Can you sell me what I want or no? Don't try to convince me that it's current year and everybody's just gay now because that's the new style. Don't do that shit to me. Sell me something that at least looks like the traditional picture, right? Show me a black version of the white man's family. I want a white patriarchy style family and black. And for all their talk about black people support the idea of black men as head of the household at 66%, they never legislate on those grounds. They don't offer any policies, programs, or laws to make me believe in those numbers, tell you the truth. If you support it, where's the legislation for it?
Aspiring to be patriarchs like what white men have, that isn't freedom. That isn't going to help anybody. It's certainly not going to help black people.
Conversation to explain that the role of gender in society is evolving, and there's a place for them in it. When Barack Obama was running for president and racism had the
Yeah, I don't think black men like the place that the Democrats have carved out for them in their new world order. Like the spot that you reserve for me in your progressive gay disco, I don't really want to be there. I don't like this spot. Really don't like this whole gay disco, honestly. It's not my kind of thing.
Potential to undermine his candidacy. He didn't wag his finger at white folks and say, shame on you, right? Mm-hmm. He had a conversation with America about how we're not red states and blue states. We're not black states and white states. And how even his grandmother, his white Hawaiian grandmother, held unconscious bias. And he offered an opportunity for America to move beyond that bias. Well, we didn't offer that to black men. We said either you're with us or you're bad, either you're with us.
Because Democrats, or black women, if you want to focus on them, they are never asked to move past their unconscious bias. Everything about the Democrat political platform is a top-down, authoritarian list of commands. Not demands from the people, but commands from the leadership.
This or you're wrong, either you're with us or you're immoral. You know, we're telling them that their Bible is wrong. And so there's another way here to bring men, not just black men, but to bring men along this journey as society is evolving, and to ensure that they know that it's not all masculinity is toxic and there's going to be a place for them in it, but we're going to have to define what that non-toxic masculinity is.
Now, that is a problem for not just the Democrats in terms of law and legal strategy or political strategy, but when you listen to like the Democrat thinkers, the thought leaders and whatnot, there is no real positive version of masculinity that the Democrats can latch onto as a conceptual baseline. They just don't have a masculinity that they can sell. They have critiques of other masculinities, but they don't have a masculinity that they can offer that we would all want to buy into.
There was this thread on Reddit, I think in a left-leaning forum, that said, people of the left, can you give me a good example of who you think a positive male role model would be? The top voted one was Aragorn from Lord of the Rings. You've had to go to a fantasy land in order to be able to find somebody who's sufficiently pure. There was this thread on Reddit, I think in a left-leaning forum, that said, people of the left, can you give me a good example of who you think a positive male role model would be? The top voted one was Aragorn from Lord of the Rings. You've had to go to a fantasy land in order to be able to find somebody who's sufficiently pure.
I was about to say, Terry, some of this is, I hate if this is a minor point, but, yeah, okay, we were raised to believe that men should be at the head of the household. I wonder what it means functionally. Because I grew up with that belief as well. I just don't know how it plays out, right? Like, who writing the checks? Who's turning the head when it needs to be, those sorts of things.
The fact that the majority of Black people, according to these numbers anyway, the fact that a majority of Black people believe that men should be ahead of the household, yet the majority of Black people are heavily Democrat, it means there's a conflict there. It means there's a bifurcation of your goals now. You can't have it both. You can't have the things that are dear to you that we all apparently want and also be a Democrat.
I would just say this about that statement of, do you believe that men should be ahead of that? I think many of us cop to that, believe in it, subscribe to it, mostly, as you pointed out, through a religious premise. And if we had to write functionally down, what does it mean to have men as head of the household? I think everybody's list is going to look different.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm glad that probably isn't the question that you asked. But I also think that your point around the rise in men choosing Republican or the Republican Party as home or reflective, I kind of think it's the party you can be a member of and not be judged and not be held accountable. Exactly right. That you can say what it is that you think in your innermost moments and nobody's going to cancel you. That it's safe because the stakes appear to be not as high.
From a different, more conceptual standpoint, when you're on the right side of politics, the right wing, you are way less likely to be lectured to and talked down to by women. And if you should so happen to find yourself being lectured to or spoken down to by a woman, you're not automatically going to be seen as the bad guy if you say sharp words to that woman who you don't really care for. That's the freedom that you're allowed outside of the liberal political social paradigm. You can kind of be a man. I'm not even trying to give the Republicans or the right wing full credit on that, but like, you can kind of be a man on the right. You can let your nuts breathe a little bit over here. Can't really do that when you're on the left. They literally want to cut your balls off.
What you do or don't do.
No, I mean, I think that's exactly right. Masculinity has become so triggering on the left. I mean, I've had this conversation in groups of progressives who've asked me, well, what is a non-toxic version of masculinity? As if they don't know non-toxic men, as if I'm not standing in the room presenting this data, right? And so there are values like masculinity, like hard work, religion, patriotism.
Those are all right-wing concepts, for one. Two, like I said, I have my suspicion about this guy. I think he's a little bit not really one of us. I think he's one of them. And the main problem that a lot of guys that are moving to the right have when the left attempts to embrace masculinity is they literally prefer you to be gay. If not an outright practicing homosexual, you got to be an ally. You have to be softer. You can't be as bold and out, just openly aggressive. All the things that they consider toxic are the things that you might be praised for outside of the left-wing social culture. And it just comes off as, you only like me if I'm gay. What am I supposed to do with you once I realize this about you?
Family, all these things that we have ceded to the right. I had a young man tell me in a focus group, anytime he sees an American flag on somebody's house, he knows they're white and he knows they're Republican. Well, we're not going to be able to just cede family values, patriotism, masculinity. I can tell you right now, all of those values are more important to my father than the Democratic Party.
Can I ask you really quick? By the way, this is quickly becoming, I just texted the co-host. I was like, this is my favorite podcast ever so far.
I know.
But
I'm so into it.
I'm really into it too. So thank you guys. Gary, I want to get you in here because I know there are some not thoughts and feelings and ideas you have. Like you don't necessarily do focus groups, but you be in the streets with the people. So I want to hear from you on like not only the part about the head of the household, but also what you think is the cause of the shift. Now Terrence typing his ass out.
I was gonna say, who is typing?
That's Terrence. Look at Terrence. Guilty.
Terrence straight in the slide over there.
He didn't want me to ask you a good question, Gary. You know I can't focus. That is so rude. But I know I'm just playing. But the head of household piece, especially being in the South, but also what you think is the reason, like when you talk to people, what's the reason for them to have even either stayed at home in 24, particularly Black men, or to have voted against their interests and voted with the Trump party?
You know, it's funny. I came across a clip of this guy in this actual segment right here, and I really didn't know where it came from. I didn't even really try to track it back to its original source, and now I realize where it comes from. And this is Gary Chambers, I believe, from Louisiana. His claim to fame was being the first person ever to smoke weed in a political ad. And he's going to go off to make some points about Black women that I'm going to comment on in a minute. I'm not even going to ruin it. I'm going to let him walk right into it.
I think it's first of all, thank you all for having me today.
Thank you, brother, for being here.
An important conversation. I have struggled with what I feel is getting the voices of Black men to be heard in this season, right? I think that there's been a period of time, and Black men and men, the patriarchal structure of America, has been guilty of muting women and their perspectives for so long.
What patriarchal structure of America, though? I don't know. Honestly, I think if once you go back to like the 60s, whenever divorce laws really got crazy, or yeah, I would put it around the 60s somewhere, but America is no longer a patriarchal country.
That once we began to sit back and listen a little bit, our voices in response have not been heard. And I think you see that in the reactions in elections, right? I think that overwhelmingly, we see that Black men want to be for the policies and the things that Democrats are for. However, if you are telling me that I have to be for something, well, damn it, I'm a man, right? I ain't got to be for nothing. And so what you see in some men is a automatic rejection to the fact that I get to have a say in what is happening here, right? We have been talked at so much rather than talked to. When we talk about the 20% of Black men who are on the other side, we spend so much time talking about them and so little time valuing the 80% of Black men who were on the side of Democrats, who have been supporting Black women. I'm from a city.
You hear this? The role of the Black male rank and file Democrat voter is to support Black women. This is something I came across a while back doing this kind of political commentary. But I realized that the political goals of Black Democrat men are exactly one for one the same as the goals of Black women. That should never be. Just as a general rule of thumb, men and women should have different outlooks on what should be done. And ultimately, the man's vision should win most of the time. But the idea that from a political standpoint, we want exactly what the women want, that makes us politically women. The Black male Democrat vote is effectively a female vote because there is no distinction from what those men want and what those women want. They are in lockstep. And that is a terrible thing for me once I realized it.
Baton Rouge, where for over a decade, the majority of our elected officials in the Black community were Black women because Black men and women put them in power. That's how we ended up with a Sharon Weston Broome as the first Black woman mayor of our city, right? And her career would not get there if Black men had not supported her. So I think that acknowledgement of Black men has to happen at a greater pace, at a louder volume than we have had in the past. When the vice president was running, I tell you personally, there are people I reached out to in August saying, I think we should be having some roundtables with brothers. We should be doing some things. I was told in nice ways and not so nice ways by certain people, like, look, we ain't focused on that right now. You know, we need to get white America, middle America, all of this. And one of the things I've said to Democrats in the beginning from day one is, if your base is Black men and Black women, if that is the base, you take care of them before you go see about anybody else.
Yeah, that's another problem that the Democrats have, and it's a stupid problem to have when you think about it. If you are a national political party, how can your base be only 13% of the country? A shrinking 13% at that, right? But that is a structural issue for the Democrats, which this is why they are making a hard pivot toward Latino season. But that's a huge problem in and of itself. And I think for the Black Democrats, what winds up happening is you overvalue yourself in the grand scheme of things. This even translates into the Black male-female social order. Black men are almost across the board looking at Black women and saying, you have overvalued yourself. You think you're worth way too much.
Right? You make sure that those people are satisfied, that they feel value. And in our community, Black women are always more loyal than Black men are going to be in these situations. If you come testing us with certain situations, we're going to look for the other option. Okay?
People in general are loyal to their resources, right? This is across the board, male, female. Black women's loyalty to the Democrat Party has nothing to do with moral clarity, moral superiority. They're not leaders of a historical movement. They're not the backbones of the community. It's not for any of these reasons. Black women's loyalty to the Democrat Party is a simple matter of power and freedom. Through the Democrats, they have the power to live apart from and free of male cooperation or authority. It's really that simple. And they'll pitch this, high horse proposition to you as if, we're the wise earth mothers trying to save you from going off this Trump cliff. But the simple fact is, Black people in general are heavily invested in federal employment, meaning Black women, to a large degree, are literally married to the government. This is why I was watching a lot of this Doge stuff recently with just a quiet glee, because I knew statistically most of those people getting fired for waste, fraud, and abuse were going to be women, mostly white women. But then out of the Black people that got fired, it would be mostly Black women. There's some Doge in this house. There's some Doge in this house. There's some Doge in this house.
Black women have a lot more. Black women have a lot more to sacrifice through this government, right? The government isn't trying to take away our right to see a doctor the way that we need to. So there are certain things that Black women cannot negotiate with in this scenario that Black men can. The other thing I think is the Democratic Party sucks at an economic message. When you talk about this conversation about who's the head of household, Black men are concerned about how they provide for their families, how they show up in the world financially, and how we do that. When we look at 59% of Black women saying that they see that role is the head of the household is for a Black man, that is because they see the role of a Black man as providing for his family and creating stability for his family.
I really want to, I would like to get into those numbers. I really don't believe that many Black women truly believe that, because the rest of the numbers don't support that belief. It would seem that it's impossible to have this incredibly high out of wedlock birth rate with those numbers.
Whether that is a 50-50 makeup of the household or taking care of 100% of the bills, because there's a lot of Black women in America who don't pay a bill because a Black man pays them all. Okay,
that cannot be true.
50-50 makeup of the household or taking care of 100% of the bills, because there's a lot of Black women in America who don't pay a bill because a Black man pays them all.
All right, that would imply you are a housewife, 24/7 homemaker. That would mean you have to be at the income level where that is actually feasible. That would mean you're telling me that there are a lot of Black women who are at that income level who are also homemakers. I don't believe those numbers. I don't believe that. Well, you didn't even put a number out. You just try to create a reality in my mind. No, there are not a lot of Black women who are full-time homemakers. It is an economic luxury, for one, and two, it's just not really culturally what's the norm in Black America.
Okay, those Black men are not praised or considered enough in the conversations. And that is a part of the problem, because we spend so much time listening to the podcast bros who have gotten so much voice in this hour that we have abandoned the voices of the men who have been angry.
Now, this is why I felt a particular need to cover this, because, you know, he had to come and talk about the podcast bros. You could have kept it all political. You could have kept it up there in the corporate office. You could have kept that at the political rally. But now you want to drag it to the YouTube streets. And that's where I live. So you're obviously talking about me on my block. I know this fat nigga really think he gonna pop shit about me on my block.
Voice in this hour that we have abandoned the voices of the men who have been anchors in our communities for decades. The reason I learned how to follow a Black woman's leadership, my pastor was a Black woman who had a Black husband who was 6'5" and 250 pounds, who would pound you on the top of your head if you said anything about his wife.
He learned how to follow a Black woman's leadership from a Black female pastor who had basically a nigga named Bigger Longer as her husband / enforcer. I mean, like, seriously, what? Let's listen to that one more time. I need to hear it again before I comment a little bit more. It was too much.
In this hour that we have abandoned the voices of the men who have been anchors in our communities for decades. The reason I learned how to follow a Black woman's leadership, my pastor was a Black woman who had a Black husband who was 6'5" and 250 pounds, who would pound you on the top of your head if you said anything about his wife. And when he was the lead, so I never struggled with seeing a Black woman in leadership, because the person who taught me my faith was a Black woman, but she was supported by a strong Black man, right? And that was an example that was shown to me from infancy until this day. We don't let the Jim Howards of the world get enough shine today.
I have I'm so grateful to you brothers for being here, because I have so many thoughts on everything you just.
I don't think the Democrats are willing to like self-examine this part of their platform, but Why would I want to be led by a woman? Just as a man, take the black off of it, because the black only adds weight to the problem. But why would a man want to be led by a woman? The Democrats seem to have this pathological desire to rewire every element of your natural operating system.
Just said. And Gary, every time you speak, it almost feels like I'm in church. I feel like you always, delivering a word. So I really appreciate your perspective. So I'm saying that if you will give me a little bit of space and grace to vent a bit, because I see these slides and I try to be really honest and unfiltered on this podcast. So one area where I feel like I filter myself is when I'm talking about Black men, because I never wanted to come across like I'm putting Black men down, even though I believe we rightfully have some righteous frustrations with our brothers.
Now, Tiffany Cross was definitely one of the women who got called out for putting Black men down. And just like Joy Reid, there was a lot of Black men clapping, doing a golf clap when her show got canceled. There was a lot of Black men just quietly because we remember. You must think I forgot, but Pepperidge Farm remembers.
Roland made a really legitimate point here. I will say, a lot of Black men sometimes feel like they're ignored or they're put down, particularly sometimes even by Black women in the media. So this is not that. But I do hear Roland's point that felt ignored. But you feel ignored, and then you go over to the other side. The oppressed feel oppressed. So then you go and try to align with the oppressor. So I'm not putting Black men down, but sometimes it's like, well, some of you Kevin Samuels following Tariq Nasheed quoting people, please look at the truth and see what's happening and get in line with some of the.
Notice how the podcast bros are universally hated by the political class right now. That's really what's happening here. The podcast bros are ruining the political class's day every day.
Black women is majority, like he said, look at the truth and see what's happening and get in line with some of the Black women is majority, like he said, vote Democrat. But that margin of people who can be plucked away from your people and go advance policies that harm your people, I just don't understand that. Roland.
Black men just aren't feeling the unity that Black women are selling right now.
In transparency, I'm writing about this. So y'all will read about all of these thoughts. And that's why I find the data so fascinating. One, when they say, when Black men say their thoughts about being the head of the household. Okay, you believe Black men should be the head of the household. Does that mean a Black woman cannot be the head of a nation? And I wonder what the dichotomy is there. Two, yes, Black
Oh, look at me talking with no sounds. I'm sorry. My bad. But Black women, black people for a while on these panels, they get to hide behind this sort of reputation that Black women have been like the strong, single, independent head of household holding it down, making everything possible, you know what I mean? And Black men just aren't really buying it anymore. And also, Black men are in a unique position to actually give truth to this narrative, to actually give truth to this lie. And if you are not good at running your household, we can't expect you to be good at running a nation. We don't want all of America to be like Black America. And so this argument that Black women should just be allowed a shot at running the nation because you've done such a great job being single moms. First of all, you abandon your roles as wives / mothers, and now you don't really do a great job as single moms, but we're supposed to ignore all of that and just operate on hope and faith.
Being the head of the household. Okay, you believe Black men should be the head of the household. Does that mean a Black woman cannot be the head of a nation? And I wonder what the dichotomy is there. Two, yes, Black men overwhelmingly are Democratic voters. I would be remiss if I didn't remind everyone that when this country had an opportunity to elect the first Black man to the highest office of the land, everyone in the Black community were right behind him, post-primary. Everybody rallied behind him. You did not hear droves of Black women saying, well, wait, before I give him my support, what's he doing for me? I don't want to hear about Black women. What are you doing specifically for me as a Black woman? No, we were right behind President Obama. We were right there campaigning, organizing. And sometimes it does feel like Black women, we keep the greater good in mind. Our interest is not so self-centered.
That right there is bull. Nobody believes this. Nobody, and the Black men in particular don't believe this anymore. We have seen your selfishness. We have seen your lack of team spirit. We have seen your uncooperative DMV attitude. We just don't believe that you are selfless and self-sacrificial. And there's this saying going around now, Black men will sacrifice they will sacrifice their happiness for the marriage. Women will sacrifice the marriage for their happiness.
When we organize, we are organizing for the greater good. It seems like the Republican Party is able to pick off these Black men because of something individual, something that they will individually get. We've seen example like this time after time. You take Snoop Dogg with Rick Caruso in Los Angeles. It was something that he specifically got. You can take, I don't want to center on celebrities because they're, this is across the board, but it's something that speaks specifically to them. As a woman, I'll be honest, I do have some belief in what people might call toxic masculinity. One, I don't want to drive ever. Like somebody else needs to always drive me. Two, I ain't never pumping no gas. I don't never want to pump. Now I don't want to touch gas.
That was a weird segue for her to say that you have belief in toxic masculinity and then immediately go to, I need people to do things for me. I don't understand what you're even talking about, but I think it tells me that in your mind, men's role is a role of service and servitude.
One, I don't want to drive ever. Like somebody else needs to always drive me. Two, I ain't never pumping no gas. I don't never want to pump. Now I don't want to touch gas. Somebody else is doing that. Three, I don't want to take out no trash. Like I do believe in traditional gender roles in a lot of ways. And I think there is something interesting happening, which is
a person who believes in traditional gender roles would not also believe in this concept of toxic masculinity.
What I'm exploring in my writing, there's something interesting happening in this dichotomy between Black men and Black women, where it is an immediate animus upon meeting each other. What are you trying to take from me? What is it you're going to give to me? Even these terms like a high value man, high value woman. And that kind of toxic thinking has penetrated our politics in a way where you are throwing a tantrum in the voting booth, again, because of something that you are dealing with personally.
Black men did not introduce the gender war into politics. I'm gonna make an argument for you guys that women are using politics to wage a social campaign against men.
Girls are actually as aggressive as boys. There's research from the 80s and 90s on this. If you include relational aggression, girls don't bully each other by threatening to punch each other in the face. Girls bully each other by damaging the other girl's social relationships, spreading rumors, spreading lies, spreading a doctored photograph, saying bad things, excluding them. It's relational aggression. And so it's always been really hard to be a middle school student. It's always been harder to be a middle school girl than a middle school boy, okay? So beginning around 2010, 2011, we throw in this brand new thing into the mix. Okay, girls, here's this beautiful thing in your hand, and here's all these programs where you can damage anyone's social relationships any time of the day or night with deniability from an anonymous account. Go at it, girls. And so the nature of girls bullying is hypercharged by social media and smartphones. That's
now he's framing this observation around how girls relate to one another, but I don't think I have to go out of my way to explain to you guys that women will use that same kind of social bullying on men. And it actually goes even farther with men, because then it becomes like accusations of assault. You know, what was a football player who had his whole career ruined with a false accusation? Like, it goes both ways. And so what I suspect is that women are using their political leverage to basically socially handicap men. And then you get, like, you know, the Tiffany Crosses of the world, who's like, why would you be mad at me? I'm your sister. Don't look at me. I would never do anything to hurt you. I'm on your side. I'm black like you black. We in this together, homie. I don't even know why you tripping at me like that. I'm, you know, black power with you. This is how they come at you, like we buddy. You know, it's literally the buddy hustle.
A motherfucker just supposed to take and accept whatever the fuck you say because I'm a black woman. Bitch, shut up. The fuck out of here.
Penetrated our politics in a way
Yeah.
where you are throwing a tantrum in the voting booth, again, because of something that you are dealing with personally. And look, I done been killed, okay? I done been wronged by black men. I've probably, you know, popped off at the mouth to black men in ways I shouldn't have.
You've all, and maybe not all, but all right? 99.9, you've all popped off at the mouth in ways that you probably shouldn't have to a black man. Yeah, just is what it is. Now, that being said, it's not the black men who are bringing the gender war to politics. Black women have always used politics to wage a gender war.
And if we continue to put people into office, and that even means some of our skinfolk who definitely are not our kinfolk, such as Byron Donalds, who are going to continue to say that, like, I mean, the fact that you sitting around talking about life was better under Jim Crow, like, is this because you don't understand history? Or literally it's because you married a white woman and so you think that whitewashed you? I'm not really sure, like, what it is.
Well,
but
you
I
couldn't
need
even be married to a white woman under Jim
correct. And it's
Now, only black men get socially ostracized for dating out. And a black politician, a black male politician, can't criticize a black female politician for having a white husband without paying a price. Jasmine Crockett made these comments months ago, and there is no price to be paid.
in history, or literally it's because you married a white woman and so you think that whitewashed you. I'm not really sure, like, what it is.
Well,
but
you
I
couldn't even
need
be married to a white woman under Jim
correct. And it took Joy to call him out. So I'm like, bruh, like, what are you talking about? Like, what are you saying? Like, he just out here, you know, I feel like they give him his talking points and he's like, yes, massa, I got it.
This is what I say you got hoodwinked, and that's okay. That's okay, because as I was just telling somebody just a minute ago, I have dated in my life. I know they've been talking about whether or not I'm married and all this other stuff. I'm not married, never married, okay? Just want to get that out there.
but I have dated. And I will say, any of us that have ever dated, we've been hoodwinked a time or two, where we just sat there and we thought that he was gonna be so great for us because he sold us on all the things, or her, okay? And then we realized they ain't shit. That's where we are, and that's okay.
Our Black female elected officials believe and will state openly, Black men kind of ain't shit. And then you wonder why there's a Black political gender issue, a divide.
I can still consider the greater good in my policy and in my politics. And it doesn't seem like that exists always. So I'm not putting brothers down, but I do believe we have righteous frustrations that need to be addressed. And I think it's a family conversation, not one to have on a round table in front of folk who ain't kinfolk.
Can I just say this really quick before you guys weigh in? It's just a filter. I will tell you that, Tiff, I'm the one that pops off at the mouth at everybody. So I'll just own that.
And let's take note of the makeup of this panel here. We have two Black women. The show is hosted by two Black women. You got Rye Cross right here at the top, and then a gay man who's in denial, Andrew Gillum at the bottom, a suspected gay, whatever this guy's name is, and then you got Gary Chambers, who was the other guest, who's like, he's an ally. And as a more like traditional thinking kind of Black man, I really don't like this sort of representation. Nothing about this panel represents me or anything I want.
It don't matter if
Black
man,
man,
woman,
white
boy, child.
man, that's
It don't
right.
matter. But I'm working on it. But I will say that I normally in conversations, I'm normally the friend that sounds very conservative about Black men. I'm normally the one that Tiff is already nodding. I'm normally the one that's running to be like, well, did they really do it like that? What actually happened? Like, I'm very protective of Black men in that way. And I gotta say, I wonder if these numbers for Black men, their performance in the election for Kamala Harris in 24 would have looked different if Kamala Harris or a Kamala Harris would have run around the same time as Barack Obama or before. Follow me on this. I think that a lot of people threw everything aside for President Obama because he appeared to be the change, the hope we believed in, the reparations we deserve, the justice we finally see, the economic opportunity that we've always deserved, like all of these things. And
or the Black guy that looked like white people will vote for.
Hey, shout out to SKC over in the Rumble chat. If you guys haven't done so, you got to follow us on Rumble as well. You can support the show directly with a Rumble chat. Shout out to SKC with the $5 Rumble chat. He says SYSBM, $1 for each letter. Thank you so much for the support. I appreciate you guys coming through. Seems like we're getting a lot of people watching tonight. Thank you so much. Hit that like button as you make your way into the show. And we will be taking the other half of the show over to Rumble in a few more minutes. So you might want to hit the link and get over to Rumble soon.
I need that money.
Shout out to SKC, bro. Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
that wasn't part of this particular point, but I hear you. I think that's very fair. But this point was just on what Black people laid aside because we thought that this was going to finally be our opportunity. We were told to wait until his second term. So we waited until his second term. And when that second term came to an end, we were still on the chopping block. We still had to sacrifice the most. We still didn't get our needs met necessarily. I'm not saying
it was worse in some way.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So let's say all that. Although Trayvon Martin could have been his son, right? And Amazing Grace at Emmanuel after Emmanuel 9. Emmanuel Mother.
Barack Obama literally got into the White House. He gave legislation for gay people. He signed some bills for women, and then he was singing and dancing for niggas the rest of the 8 years. I swear to God, that's all he did. I remember one time he gave the speech to the Morehouse. I think it was a Morehouse graduation ceremony, and these motherfuckers, they were sitting in the rain. And he was like talking down to him, like, you got to do better. You got to do more. You got to get out there and serve your community type shit. I'm like, nigga, the nerve of you. Go back in the White House and sing and dance.
Their Emanuel massacre. All I'm saying is some of the intense frustration with the parties reached a fever pitch after nothing really changed, especially when you go in the hood under a President Obama. So then you're like, okay, well, Hillary Clinton, they're like, I don't know. Now, if he couldn't do it, I really don't know. Then Donald Trump.
And she was super predator lady.
I'm clear. Donald Trump, super predator lady. See, I peeped that too, Gary, but I'm with you. Also, she was born on my birthday, so shout out to Hillary. But I will just say this. You have those two, then you have Trump, and then you have this narrative that under Trump, people were doing better because they weren't prosecuted yet for them PPP loans and, you know, all of the other things that.
Things were just noticeably better under Trump. I gotta tell you, like the day Biden got elected, the stock market took a nap, and it really hasn't woken up yet.
That check felt like it was going to go a little further. They didn't really understand the congressional role. They don't really remember it feeling like that under Joe Biden. Joe Biden is the same Joe Biden of the crime bill, to bring that back in, Gary, but they still pushed it aside. Particularly in 2020, because there's this George Floyd moment, but the George Floyd moment was lost too. And so we're back at square one. And
you're back at square one because the George Floyd moment was literally taken over. I can't even say taken over. It was just dominated from start to finish by women and gays. Black men started to notice that dead black men, straight black men, their deaths would be leveraged by women and gays for political gain. Nothing of value to your average straight black man who, you know, wants to be the head of the household, as we were talking about. Nothing of value was gained by those guys. But the women and the gays, it's been a gay disco for them nonstop for years.
just have to wonder if in the flatness of data, Terrence, not in your skills, but in data, just looking at it on paper, if we don't miss all of the nuances, all of the times where the party we were told had our best interest really didn't, or at least we didn't feel like it did. Our circumstances didn't remarkably change. Did she get penalized for all of the baggage of the party and not so much because this was a woman at the top of a ticket? I'm not saying nobody was saying that BS. But I got to tell you, there are a lot of folks who are close to me who held their nose and voted for the party, not because Kamala Harris was at the top of the ticket.
Kamala Harris was a universally disliked bad candidate. She would have never earned her spot on the ticket on her own. And so to even blame that on anything like sexism or racism is just you going out on the attack for no good reason. But you're also ignoring simple truths. It wasn't that people didn't want to be dominated by a woman. I mean, at the very least, if we're going to vote for a female president, at the least, she has to be liked. She has to be well liked. That's a general rule of thumb for women across the board in life. Women do better when people like them.
As you guys answer, I would love for you to address some of the things I was saying, because I want to be clear. I'm not representing a party. I'm not talking about Democratic politics. Like, the party to me is completely irrelevant to the point I was making. I'm talking about the dynamic between Black men and Black women and the infrastructure of the country, not necessarily Democrat, Republican. But I think both are super relevant. So we'll be quiet and let you guys take all of that me and Angela just threw at you, because I want to hear your response to both. Whoever want to take it.
And I'm going to drop the link to the Rumble chat one more time. We are going to take this show over to Rumble in another 5 minutes, maybe. So if you haven't done so already, hit the link. The second half of today's presentation will be conducted as a Rumble exclusive. So I'll see you guys on the other side.
I'll jump in to Angela's point, I think, and I wrote this down in response to some of what Tiffany was saying. I think that we have to own the failures of Black leadership. that the only way that Black people can make you pay for not delivering is to either vote for someone else or not to vote. And that there are people willing to make the party or the politician pay a consequence for not delivering for the things that they've said. One of my lawyers, who has a Juris Doctorate from an HBCU, had hard up arguments with me about whether or not he would vote for Hillary Clinton. Before, and it had nothing to do with her being a white woman. It had to do with the things he believed she helped orchestrate against us, and whether or not the Democratic Party would deliver for Black people after Black folks had shown up the way that we did for Obama.
Yeah, he was probably talking about how Hillary just ran through Haiti. There's probably, you know what, I'm not even going to say it. I'm going to wait till we're on Rumble. Yeah. Hillary probably did a lot of things in Haiti.
There are Black men who are tired of every time saying, we'll wait till next time. There are people ready to abandon the ship, like say, burn it all down. We don't want to be a part of any of your party structure. I think that comes into play with some of the odds that we have, Tiff, within our structure with each other, that some of the men in our community have just made a decision. I'm opting out of all of that because they're not listening to us. They're not working with us to the things that they said. I also think that we never talk about the elephant in the room that Vice President Harris was married to a white man. That was a huge conversation for a lot of Black men.
Right, because only Black men get heat for that. Black women get celebrated for dating out. Black men get punished. We get castigated. We get ostracized for dating out. And now you want to put this allegedly Black woman in front of me. That was a question in and of itself. And then she doesn't even have a Black husband. So like her hold on Blackness is tentative at best, but she tried to sell that shit to me like I was blind.
Barack Obama was all that he was, but Barack was married to Michelle from the south side of Chicago. And when things got twisted and rocky with the Black community, Michelle Obama came into the Black community and had conversations with Black women and Black people to settle the storm and bring Black people along with Barack Obama. Vice President Harris had Doug, and he's a great guy for her, and it's a great partner. And we don't get to choose her partner for her. She has a right to marry who she wants to. But we have a right to have a perspective about who that partner is and what conversations are had about Black people when you are laying on the pillow at night about these conversations. Most people feel like Michelle Obama was checking Barack about whether or not he was doing certain things for Black folk. Now, whether or not we feel like that, we know if that's true or not, we don't know, but most Black folk felt that.
Black politicians, Black people on the Democrat side of the game, they are way too comfortable with this idea that Black women's role is to check Black men for whatever. They'll never allow themselves to say that a Black man should be checking a Black woman. It would never cross his mind. It's not a part of his vocabulary. He isn't capable of that level of syntax to say that this man is supposed to check this woman. But he's comfortable as hell saying, well, Michelle Obama would check Barack if he wasn't doing right.
You don't get to feel that with Vice President Harris. We also did not hear Black women criticize that piece of the conversation the way that we know Black men would have been criticized if we had a white wife. Now, as somebody who believes in the Black family unit, that if you got the only way to do this and be about this all the way for me personally, is to be with a Black woman. There's a lot of Black people who share that belief and cannot see outside of that. And we have to have the conversations within our community and talk to them about the policies that make these things worth sacrificing some of the things that we don't want to put on our shelf.
Before he finishes that, and we're going to take a quick break right here, and we're going to switch over to Rumble. But this is the last thing I want to talk about before we close out this half of the show. Black men have been and are far more loyal to Black women than Black women have been to Black men. I think the numbers reflect that. And the divorce rates, the marriage rates, the out of wedlock birth rates. This political divide is an obvious example of that. The fact that women have effectively declared war on men is a great example of that. And actually, you know what? We're gonna wait until we make it to the other side of this break, and I'm gonna share another clip with you, and we'll get back into this this video review in a moment. If you haven't done so already, now is the time. Hit this link. We are taking the show on the road. We're packing up, heading over to Rumble, y'all. I appreciate you guys so much for being loyal supporters over on YouTube, but it's time to move on, boys and girls. We got to take this show on the road. We are planting our flag on Rumble. Rumble exclusive content is coming up right now. Thank you so much for watching. Appreciate everybody. Hit that like button on your way out of here, but we are closing this thing down. I will see you on the new show and the new Rumble channel in just a moment. Peace, y'all.
Done. It's done. It's done. It's done. It's done. It's done.